the IDF is making progress, and the last week and a half, 2 weeks have been, I think, very successful from a tactical military point of view. When you take stock of the current situation between Israel and Hezbollah, most, if not all, of Hezbollah's chain of command and senior leadership have been eliminated. There's been a significant blow to their morale and their ability to conduct command and control. And according to preliminary Israeli estimates of Hezbollah rocket capabilities, some estimates indicate that about half of the long-range launchers have been taken out of commission by direct Israeli strikes over the last few days. And as we are speaking, the IDF continues to strike and basically dismantle additional parts of Hezbollah's military infrastructure. Most of that infrastructure, by the way, is hidden in between Lebanese houses. Some of their rockets are stored within Lebanese buildings and houses themselves in close proximity to civilians. And we're beginning to see the consequences of that Hezbollah strategy in a rather high number of casualties in Lebanon.
That's an interesting analysis, because there has been a lot of footage of secondary explosions that would suggest that what Israel's forces are hitting contains weapons caches and ammunition.
Indeed, and these are videos that Hezbollah has been working a lot in order to suppress, because that's an inconvenience for them. Usually in normal days, Hezbollah would have the ability to intimidate people and make sure that they don't film, and of course that they don't disseminate videos that are inconvenient for Hezbollah. But there's a war going on, Lebanese are taking pictures, and it's very, very clear to anybody with common sense when you see a Lebanese house that keeps on burning and exploding with hundreds of secondary explosions afterwards. You come to the very basic conclusion that stuff was being stored in that building that had no business in a residential building inside a Lebanese village. So Hezbollah strategy is fully displayed here. The sad thing is that Lebanese civilians are paying the price. And, I think it's important to mention that Israel did give Lebanese civilians a 2-hour warning ahead of the most significant strikes in the Bekaa Valley and in southern and central Lebanon, where the IDF spokesperson said in Arabic and even on radio broadcasts and social media, etc., whoever knows that there are Hezbollah weapons in their house, you should exit the house as soon as possible, because we're going to strike. And if you want to be safe, you better leave the house.
There is, of course, this much talked about arsenal of long-range missiles that Hezbollah has, that it can fire across Israel and hit targets in populated areas. How concerning is that still? And has Hezbollah shown its full hand yet?
No, Hezbollah has not come even close to going all in and using all of the deadly arsenal that they have been stockpiling in Lebanon over the last 17 years, since 2006. They have significant military capabilities. We're talking about nation-state capabilities in the amount of rockets, the range, and in their precision. Hezbollah, for the first time in history, fired a long-range ballistic missile from Lebanon towards Tel Aviv. So it was successfully intercepted by the David Sling air defense system, which is a significant success. But nobody in Israel thinks that this is it. Everybody knows that Hezbollah has significant military capabilities, and I don't think that anybody is taking Hezbollah lightly. We know that the Iranians have been providing them with tremendous weaponry over the years, some of the best weapons that are produced by the Iranian military industry are provided to Hezbollah. And if Hezbollah makes the decision to go all in, if Hezbollah prefers Iran and Hamas over the future of Lebanon, then for sure there will be significant casualties in Israel, and we will see a very difficult escalation in the region.
How much of a concern is there that Israel's phenomenally successful defensive mechanisms, the Iron Dome and David Sling, etc., might still be overwhelmed in the event that Hezbollah decide to use everything it's got?
Sadly, it's not just a concern. I think that is the working assumption. If you look at the amount of rockets that Hezbollah has and the amount of launches that they had up until a week and a half ago, they would be able to fire a massive amount of rockets every day, thousands of rockets every day at Israel. And of course, that would overwhelm Israeli air defenses. And these rockets, Hezbollah rockets, are aimed at Israeli cities. They're aimed to kill Israeli civilians. Hezbollah are playing a very cynical game here where they claim that they're firing at military bases, air bases, and the Mossad headquarters. I see that as nothing more than cheap propaganda for the very gullible. Hezbollah are aiming for Israeli cities. That is their target. They want to kill Israeli civilians, and that is what they're using their weapons for. And what Israel has been doing over the last week is to really make that difficult for Hezbollah. And what Israel has been focusing on is to strike the rocket launchers that are dispersed all over southern, central, and northeastern Lebanon. Why the launchers? Because Israel understands that Hezbollah has a tremendous amount of rockets and that it won't be able to strike them because they're hidden deeply underground in protected areas. But what Israel is focusing on is the launchers, and the launchers are accessible. And with accurate intelligence that Israel has been gathering over many years, those launchers are being struck, and that is important. We don't yet know how well these launchers have been struck and what the actual bottom line is for Hezbollah. But I think that it's been significant, and I think that it will limit Hezbollah's ability to fire.
There's always a growing call on Israel to hold back, to commit to a ceasefire when it appears militarily that the job that they're trying to do is not yet done. Last night at the UN, there was talk of a truce being imminent. But then, as has been the pattern so far, the next day, Netanyahu and people close to him deny that there is any kind of truce imminent and there are no plans for a ceasefire right now. How do you see the lay of the land there?
Yeah, I think it's a very regrettable charade that Israelis have become all too accustomed to, whereby Israel is attacked, Israel sustains casualties, then generates a response, a defensive one, in order to protect itself. And then once it begins to hurt on the other side, whether it's Palestinians or Lebanese or Syrians or Iraqis or Yemenites or Iranians, then there's criticism focused on Israel. And all of a sudden, people around the world, elected leaders, are concerned about regional stability and the threat of escalation. I ask, where were you when Israel was attacked on the 7th of October? Where were your cries and your calls for restraint when Israel was attacked on the 7th of October and before that? And where were you when UN Security Council Resolution 1701 was obliterated day by day by Hezbollah, not implemented and not upheld by the UN peacekeeping force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, which is supposed to supervise and make sure that it's implemented? Why weren't people challenged then, and why weren't people alarmed when it was very clear that Hezbollah was arming itself with weapons that have one specific purpose: to be fired at Israel and to wage war against Israel? That was the threat to escalation, and that was really what should have been prevented. And it's sad that the international community, the UN Security Council and UN peacekeeping, have not been able to prevent what should have been prevented. But now again, Israel faces significant military threats, and still, despite not being the aggressor, Israel is being called upon to limit its actions and to prevent escalation. Frankly, I think it's a bit late in the game for that. And I think that 11 and a half months, Israel has been absorbing a lot of incoming fire from Lebanon. More than 8,800 rockets have been fired from Lebanon at Israel. Now Israel is operating in order to limit that threat and to push back and to allow Israeli civilians to go back home. And anybody who really was concerned about regional stability should have been busy in the 11 months coming up to this and not now.
You hear the jets overhead. We have been striking all day. This is to both prepare the ground for your possible entry and to continue degrading Hezbollah. Today, Hezbollah expanded its range of fire, and later today they will receive a very strong response. Prepare yourselves. Today we will continue. We are not stopping. We keep striking and hitting them everywhere. The goal is very clear: to safely return the residents of the north. To achieve that, we are preparing the process of a maneuver, which means your military boots, your maneuvering boots, will enter enemy territory, enter villages that Hezbollah has prepared as large military outposts, with underground infrastructure, staging points, and launch pads into our territory, and to carry out attacks on Israeli civilians. Your entry into those areas with force, your encounter with Hezbollah operatives, will show them what it means to face a professional, highly skilled, and battle-experienced force. You are coming in much stronger and far more experienced than they are. You will go in, destroy the enemy there, and decisively destroy their infrastructure. These are the things that will allow us to safely return the residents of the north afterward.
Well, I think that it's very important that Israel will have the ability and to be ready to execute that. And that's the job of the military, to have options on the table. And based on what the government, the cabinet, is able to do in terms of its diplomatic negotiations, then have those tools available, and if necessary, execute it, and execute it in a professional manner that inflicts maximum damage on the enemy and inflicts pain on the enemy until the enemy is defeated. That is what militaries are about, and many people around the world have, for some reason, forgotten that that is what war is about, and that is what militaries do. It doesn't mean that you're a warmonger if you are preparing yourselves to fight the enemy. So I think that there's a risk, there's definitely the chance of that happening. I am very sure that Israeli leaders and the Israeli military will not go into such an operation lightheartedly. This is a very heavy decision to be made because it entails a lot of casualties on the Israeli side and also on the Lebanese side. And it's something that I think Israel will go to only if all other options fail, if the international community won't be able to apply pressure on Tehran, Beirut, and Hezbollah in order to force them to stop firing at Israel, and if it won't be possible to allow Israeli civilians to go home safely and end 11.5 months of forced displacement caused by Hezbollah rocket fire.